Hello, everyone. Hello. It's been a while since I've done a YouTube video with you all. So, welcome to today's broadcast, which is brought to you by Dreena's Kind Kitchen. Indeed. Celebrated 1 year in August. And stay tuned for the end of the video because I will be doing a giveaway for you. Okay, so stay tuned. And today, I'm going to talk about these beastly vegetables we see at the stores, at the supermarkets, at farmers markets, at our corner stores, and we're not always sure what to do with them, right? Like this guy or this one. They are kind of intimidating, right? So I have a little story about squash, and I'm going to talk about sort of my discovery of different squash because I didn't always love them. But I do want to mention before I start getting into the squash that for those of you who are into skincare and, just taking care of yourself, I have something very special and exciting coming up in about maybe 2 weeks. Okay, so if you're not subscribed to my videos, subscribe or follow on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you are, please follow. YouTube, subscribe, and I'll be sharing something really exciting. You guys are going to love it. Those of you who are, into skincare regimen, that kind of thing, and it will be perfect in time for the holidays. Okay, which seems like, oh my gosh, right? We're not that far. Okay, so I wanted to do this video today. I've been wanting to do this video for a little while. I had this idea come to mind when I was doing a meditation one morning. That's when the good ideas come. And I thought, I have another video on squash, on butternut squash. So you can go look at that one if you want to see. I show how to prepare it different ways. Because this is a butternut squash. Some of us know how to prepare squash one way. And I default to baking them all the time. So let's talk about that. So today I bought a lot of squash today. I bought like $35 worth of squash. But you know what? I got a lot of squash because I got them at a local market here. And they're all beautiful, no spray crops. And I want to show you the before and after. Okay, so I have all the raw squash. And then I'm going to show you what they look like on the inside after we cut into them. So I have them all baked behind me. And I'm just going to get a seat. Hang on. I should have had my chair here earlier, but I'm just going to grab it and come sit down with you guys. You guys have a tea? Do you have a tea and chocolate? I actually don't have mine today. Okay, so let's look at all these squash. And I'm going to tell you which ones they are. So I selected the ones that are sort of the most common, okay? The most common winter squash. There are others out there, but I think these are the ones that we see most often and that we see in recipes. So right here, and where are you? I want to know from you guys, do you know how to cook winter squash? Or is this like totally new to you? If it is, that's great. So chat, let me know. Do you use winter squash? Or are you kind of like put off by how to prep them? Because that was my story. So like when I began cooking with winter squash, I started with this one, butternut, and started with this one, spaghetti squash. I don't think this is the most interesting or tasty squash. Butternut's good, but it's not as good as another one, at least in my opinion. So when I started, I think it was the era of when the whole no carb thing started, or low carb, and using spaghetti squash in place of pasta, right? Which is fine, you can, but to me, if you want pasta, have pasta, right? I love to use squash for their own reasons and not to take down from another food, right? So spaghetti squash is kind of fun. It strings, you cut it and it strings like spaghetti, but maybe you enjoy that just as it is and not to replace pasta, right? but we'll show you that in a minute. So when I started with squash, I did not think they were very tasty or interesting. So anyone else, like raise a hand, chat, was that your experience, or do you not find them very appealing? And so I want to show you that sometimes it's how it's cooked, the variety of squash, okay? Because I think when I started, I also started with acorn squash. Again, not my favorite, but these are the ones for some reason that get the attention. Like this one, acorn squash is almost always shown as stuffed squash. You see it in cooking magazines where they cut the squash in half and it's filled with like a stuffing, wild rice stuffing or bread-based stuffing, and it's like a Thanksgiving or holiday side or main, right? That's this guy, acorn. And then butternut squash is used a lot in soups, right? All the time, and sometimes it's cubed. This is also the one that if you go to a grocery store and you look in the prepared areas of, say, like the where they have cut veggies and cut fruit, right? You know how you can buy packaged pre-cut watermelon, pre-cut pineapple, pre-cut whatever. I'm trying to just think now what veggies, but the veggie that they always have pre-cut as a squash is butternut. It's always butternut, and it's one of the easier ones to prepare. So let's show you all of the ones I have here today. Okay, so this is our little selection of squash. So I bought 2 of each of these today, so that because I really love you guys and I want you to know about squash. So I bought 2 of each so that I could show you guys what one looks like raw and what one looks like cooked. Okay, so this is your butternut. And when you cut open a butternut, the seeds are down here in this bulbous area. Everything from here up is the butternut squash flesh. And then at the base, there's like, that's where it holds the seeds. So sometimes when you're preparing it, if you're preparing it raw, which I'm going to get a cutting board and show you. So actually, I'll cut open the one that's cooked. So this is the butternut squash. This is my cutting board I love, by the way. I shared this the other day. So if you want to learn about this cutting board, the Eli Home, I have a video on that. So this is butternut squash. Everyone or most people know this one. And you can get them smaller. You can get them quite big too. This is sort of, you know, average size. That's what she said. And then this one, what's interesting, sorry, I couldn't resist. What's interesting is this one at the store. When I bought this at the market, they called it sweet potato squash. Has anyone else, hi Kitty Mommy and Richard, and I'll catch up with comments in just a moment. So this one I know is delicata squash. Anybody else? At the store, they called it sweet potato squash, and I've never seen it called sweet potato squash before. I know it as delicata. So that's this one. And then this is the spaghetti squash, very like a lighter yellow color. And this is generally the shape. It's it's not squished like a pumpkin shape or this shape. It's a little more oval. And then this is your acorn squash because it looks like a little acorn, right? It looks like a little acorn that you find on the ground. And so I would say that the inside of an acorn is probably similar to the inside of a delicata. It's sort of a mild, sweet squash, kind of like a not really, really dark orange, right? Sort of more yellow orange color, both of these. And then this one's a lighter color. It's more of a yellow color and probably the mildest in flavor. I think that's why I don't find it particularly interesting because I never buy this, but maybe I'll find some fun things to do with it now. To me, it's a little watery and it's good, but it's not as good as what I think are the best, these guys. And these are the ones we don't buy because they look really difficult to work with. I mean, look at these guys. They're heavy, right? And they're like weapons. And the other thing is these are hard to cut into. So if you want to prepare these squash from raw state, and make like and roast it up in chunks or in slices. I'd go with the delicata because it's easy to peel. You can use your vegetable peeler and actually peel down a delicata. See, you can actually peel down. You can even leave the peel on. You don't even have to take the peel off a delicata. And that's the flesh. And so then you can cut it in half, scrape out the seeds, and then slice it into like half rings. Same goes for a butternut. You can actually peel a butternut with a vegetable peeler. Isn't that crazy? I know. When I discovered that, I was like, what? But you can peel it like down the length. I'm not going to do that because then I'll have to use this one again. And I already have like 5 big squash behind me. So I'm going to be making a lot of soup, I think. But there's other things you can do with it. And I will talk about that. Okay, so these are sort of the main squash that you'll find. And these two are called kabocha. And this one is green kabocha. This is red kabocha. I feel like this one is sometimes called red curry squash, or another one that looks a little bit like it is kind of a little more like an acorn shape, and it's called red curry. But this is kabocha, orange or red kabocha, green kabocha, butternut. It's fun to say. Can you tell? I love to say kabocha squash. What the kabocha? Spaghetti, delicata, acorn. Okay, we all got it? Yeah. Okay, so Kitty Mommy's saying she's getting ready to eat delicata. Cool. She doesn't like spaghetti. See, and spaghetti got a lot of attention. There was a time it was like people were using it for pasta all the time with tomato sauce, and I found that not so appealing. And I think that's what people equate even like eating plant-based with. And it's not very filling. Like, it's a beautiful vegetable to use in other ways. But if you want to have pasta, have pasta. Okay, Kitty Mommy's also saying she tried kabocha and it was really tasty all by itself. That's what I love. This is exactly why I like kabocha. Eat it straight up. I had it for lunch I did some like dry saute of kale, which I also did a YouTube video on. If you search my channel for kale, you'll see that one with quinoa. And that is kind of like my perfect lunch. And because I baked one of these guys up yesterday, and it's really the only thing I like about fall and winter is being able to eat squash and weird toques, because I don't love this time of year, like summer, but I do love squash. But I didn't always, and I didn't want to use them. And I thought, I'd just make a butternut squash soup. And now that I've tried this darker orange, the reason I love it, and I think you will love it, is because it has a really dense texture. And the flavor it's sweet, but it's dense and not watery. And there's something very satisfying about it. It has a comforting quality. It has some substance. You eat it and you feel like you ate something good and starchy that's really good for you. Well, maybe like a sweet potato, but it's actually not even as moist, or not moist, but as watery as a sweet potato. It has a drier consistency, but it's really, really good. Okay. She baked it whole, and I just finishing reading your thing. I also bake these whole. And the reason is that they're hard. They're hard to cut into and get into. But when you bake them, it's really easy. So I'm going to show you now after baking them. So the red kabocha. How is that not a pumpkin? It's just a variety, right? So it's like kind of like apples have different varieties. Squash do too. And so, or if you think of oranges, right? Like there's blood orange and cara oranges and straight up Valencia navel oranges. So this is just another variety of winter squash that looks a bit like a pumpkin. And I didn't get a pumpkin because I feel like everyone knows what a pumpkin is. And I also don't think it's one of the tastier ones, except if it's maybe like a sugar pumpkin that people use for pies and stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to get the tray of cooked squash to show you. And these are heavy, guys. This is how you get a little workout into. Okay, so here are all the squash now cooked. And so you can see also they change a little bit in color. So here's your butternut, right? And then this is the delicata. It's a little bit too down there. Sorry, whoops, too low. There we go. And the spaghetti. And this is the acorn. So it becomes a little, see how the acorn looks a bit glossy when it's cooked? See that? It's darker and glossy. And then this is the green kabocha and the red or orange. This one goes more orange when it's cooked. So now I'm going to open them up and show you. And yeah, it was kind of funny when I was leaving the store today with all the squash, and I met a woman, a sweet woman at the checkout. And she was like, I never ever use those. What do I do with them? And I was like, I'm doing a video on these today. And I was like, get this next time. It's delicious. So then we talked in the parking lot more about it. So this is the delicata, and I'm just going to cut into this one. Okay. So this is what it looks like inside. It smells nice. It has a sweet, almost nutty, sweet flavor. And so what I do is I just get a spoon and scrape out, because it's really nice to see the how-tos of these. We can talk about like online what to do with it, but when you actually see it, then it's a little more helpful, I find, right? Most of us are pretty visual people. I just put the seeds in compost. And of course, if you wanted to cut this raw, if you were cutting this raw, you would scrape out the seeds. It takes a little longer to scrape them out. And then you could cut in rings and bake it with seasonings. But if you notice, this squash, just because how it was on the pan, it's softer up here, not as soft down here. So if you wanted, you could use this end to put in salads because it's got a little more texture. This end would be good into like a puree, a soup or something. It smells nice, but it's not my favorite. Okay, and now this is acorn. Also, I bake them on a parchment, or I use silicone sheets here today. But either parchment or something on the baking sheet, because they do tend to, sometimes they ooze a little bit. You don't want to pierce them because then they will ooze all over your tray. You don't want that. Just let them bake. I've never had one explode ever. And I usually bake like 425. It's about like, depends on the squash. This one will bake in about maybe 25 minutes, whereas this guy needs like 40 minutes, right? So, and this is the acorn. So you can see like this one, all the seeds are right. Oh, sorry, too low. Hang on. There we go. It's just me and my computer, guys. So you scoop out the seeds here. And so this is the kind you see again I'm just going to put this in compost after. In magazines and such, like as a stuffed squash. And you can see the color is much like a delicata, right? This one smells better. This has a sweeter, nuttier smell. This one just smells a bit bland. It's okay. So I will probably put this in a soup. Again, you know, everyone has their personal preferences. So I'm just kind of giving you mine. Okay, let's do the spaghetti, because this is the magical one. So the rind on this is really tough. Even cutting through it baked, it's still kind of tough. It's got like a, see that? It's like a very, what's the word I'm going to use? It's not pliable. The rind is not pliable, but that works okay because then the flesh tears away from the peel really easily for you to use it. So again, scooping out the seeds. These are still a bit hot, so don't do what I do. Don't do what I do and not use oven mitts and such. But this is what I do all the time. So this one's funny because as you're scraping out the seeds, it already starts to break away into the shreds. And so you can see here right now, that's our spaghetti squash. And if you get a fork and just break apart, it comes off into little spaghetti shreds. See? But again, it's not pasta, right? It's like little spaghetti shreds. More like linguine, actually. It's very fine. And yeah, so like you could use this as a base for something like a sauce. I think it'd be good in a stir fry with rice and such because the texture is kind of stringy. So there you go. That is the spaghetti squash. Everyone seen that? Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. And Trish is saying, don't overcook spaghetti squash. This one is not overcooked. It's still got texture. But I think I made, if you cut it crosswise, it can be a bowl for sauce and meatballs. Right. So you can, like, you can cut it either way and then scrape it out. But I don't know. The flavor for me is not as interesting as the darker ones. Okay. But I don't use it as much either. So if you have tips on spaghetti squash, share them because, like I said, I don't use them a lot. I have used them, but they're not one I repeat by. Here is your butternut squash. So this is the end that has no seeds. So this is really nice if you don't bake it too long. This one is pretty tender, but if you just bake it till it just gets pierced with a knife, then you can cube this, right? And put it in salads or bowls. But like this, it's also really nice to puree for sauces and soups, which again, I'll give you more info on that. So that's how I like to prepare when I'm cutting into the butternut squash. I try to find the spot where the seeds start. So that's where the seeds are, see? So I try to find the spot where the seeds start, get them scraped out, then cut that away after. I have a lot of squash to use now. And we're not actually having squash for supper tonight because I have some leftover chili, but I might put some squash in the chili, right? I can easily do that. But this one, butternut, it's good, but to me, it's a little more watery. Can you see that? Can you see the texture there's a certain level of moisture in it. And again, it depends on the grower, right? The source of the squash. It can be, I have baked up butternut squash that tastes much better than others. And I think it depends on if it's like where it's grown, the quality of the soil, if it's organic and that kind of thing. Sometimes I have bought them and this is not the color. They're not deep orange at all. So this is a nice one, but it does have a more watery texture than what I'm going to show you now. Oh my gosh, I have squash and seeds everywhere here. What a mess. Who wants to clean this up for me after? No takers. Okay, here we go. This is the kabocha, and it looks like a little happy face. Ooh. I do that with the kids. They think I'm crazy. It's like a little smile. Okay, so scraping out the seeds of the kabocha. And that's how you clean that out, right? That's it. You just scrape it out. And then I usually let them cool before I pack them. And what I do is I tear away all of the tough rind. This one comes off really easy. See that? Look at that. Comes off nice and easy. And then I put this into like airtight containers in the fridge. You can freeze it. I use like Ziploc containers or the zip tops. And yeah, and that is your kabocha. It's like a little heart. And that one has a different texture. It's a little more dense. Can you see that? See how it has this dense texture compared to the butternut. Okay, compared to this. And you might prefer butternut. See that? Okay, and now the orange one, which I think is the best. Look at that. This is by far my favorite. And I think because the green kabocha, where the squash meets the rind, can be slightly bitter, that dark green component. So I'll show you now. Okay, so see this guy where the dark green hits the flesh, like right there, it can be slightly bitter, whereas this one has a sweeter quality all around. So this is the guy that I love to buy all the time. and I cook it just like this. I have one in the fridge. I'll get it right now. See, I did one yesterday and it's in the fridge. I had it for lunch. I warmed it up in the toaster oven on a tray with parchment. And see, still in pieces. And I popped it into like a Buddha bowl with quinoa and the kale. I love that with a little bit of I had a dressing that I made. I ran out of tahini, so I made a dressing with pistachio seeds or pistachio nuts, sorry, not seeds, and made it like a ginger garlicky kind of what you would associate with a tahini sauce, but I made it with pistachio. So I drizzled some of that on and Miso Nuch, which I'm going to share with you in just a minute. And like, I love that. It's so satisfying. So this is definitely my favorite. And I highly encourage you guys to go out and get one of these guys, bake it up and try it. And I just want to go back to what Kitty Mommy was saying about the spaghetti squash. I get what you're saying. If you cut it, I think what she's saying, if you cut it this way down the length, and then when it's cut, you can prop it like that. The top would be gone. Scoop out the seeds, and you can fill it up with your spaghetti and meatball, like veggie meatballs. So I get what you're saying. It's a bowl, it's its own bowl, which is kind of cool. But similarly, you could, fill this up and scoop it out, fill it up with rice or whatever you want, and eat that. But this is, again, my favorite. So I just want to show you the squash. Again, the consistency of this one. You see how much more firm it is? Look at that. When I break it away, see that? There's the texture that I want to convey to you. And I will say it's not as aromatic as a delicata. Delicata has a sweeter, what kind of smell? A sweeter, almost corn-like smell. That's the smell I kind of get from a delicata, like a sweet corn smell. So, but this tastes, to me, it has a sweet taste. And it's like if you were to taste it against something that's bitter in nature, like kale has a bitter quality. Squash has a sweet quality. And I just really love this texture, right? Very, very satisfying. So that's your breakdown of squash. And I wanted to share with you that I do have a couple of squash recipes on my site. I have this one here that's in my face. You know how you can't find where it's coming from? And it's like, I have a squash soup that's really rich and delicious because I have had squash soups at like restaurants or cafes and they're very thin and not like substantial, which again is fine. Maybe you have that as a starter. But for me, soups are a meal. So when I make a squash soup, I want it to be really comforting and substantial, right? So I make them thicker. So the one on my site is, it's a very like thick, comforting, like you don't feel like you need to have anything else with it soup, but you might have some bread with it or maybe some rice on the side, but you don't feel like you need to. So that one is called Smashing Squash Soup. I think I linked it. I think I did link it in the description. And I have a squash spaghetti sauce that is delicious. I tend to use this one or the butternut for it. And one of my friends and recipe testers, Molly, she recently, well, last year when I put the recipe out, she was loving it. And she made it far beyond like using it for pasta sauce. She was using it in like really creative Buddha bowls and making like because it has a curry kind of flavor to it. And she was making really cool bowls with different vegetables with it. So that one is in my Simply Plants ebook, but I did a video for the recipe and you can basically get the breakdown of the recipe in the video. So you can link to that as well. And then the other thing I wanted to mention to you, something I love to have on squash. Just checking. Checking. Emails. Yeah, a lot of people love butternut, right? So that's cool because butternut, I mean, it's a really widely available squash. I like to buy the smaller ones because I think they're a little sweeter and less watery. So rather than get like a big butternut, sometimes I just like to get the small ones and bake them up, and they bake much quicker. So if you get like 3 or 4 butternut that are smaller, put them all in the oven together, they're going to bake faster than like one big one. And I usually bake, someone asked about temperature. I usually go about 425, and then it depends on the size of the squash. So like a smaller one will bake maybe in 25, 30 minutes, bigger ones about 40, but you can check, right? So you look at them and see they start to get glossy looking on the outside. The skin gets glossy, and you can tell. Just use a sharp knife, excuse me, like a serrated knife, and just pierce the squash, right? So when it's baking, it's gonna be able to go through. Whereas when you have one like this and it's raw, right, you're not getting into that squash. So once it's nice and tender, you'll see it should have like a little bit of yield. If it doesn't, it's really squishy, and that's okay. You can use it in soups, but if you want to keep it firmer for cutting into cubes, then you want it to have like a little bit of yield. See that? How it's got just a tiny bit of yield. And squashes will differ as well, right? So there's your acorn, and it goes through. This is a product that I think is pretty innovative, and I love it on Buddha bowls, on greens, on quinoa, on squash, on just about everything. So this is a product it's the same company that does the vanilla bean powder, which I'm always raving about. And they do really nice nut butters. And I'm going to do a video on just this and a couple of other products soon. But because I had it for lunch, I want to show it to you today. It's called Miso Nuch. So you know Nuch is for nutritional yeast. And a lot of people ask, is there a substitute for nutritional yeast? There isn't really. Like, it's its own very unique product. It's kind of like saying, is there a substitute for, trying to find something else, like for, I don't know, banana. Banana is a very kind of specific flavor. And so the closest that I might substitute banana is maybe mango, like frozen mango, because they're both like latex fruits, and frozen, they can kind of give a similar texture. But nutritional yeast is very unique. But this product is basically flaked miso. So I'm going to read what it says. High in probiotics because it's miso. Sprinkle this probiotic-rich umami. So miso is one of those ingredients that offers that umami, that fifth flavor sensation element. Other products and other foods that give you that umami quality are like olives, sun-dried tomatoes, sun-dried or tomato paste, vegan Worcestershire sauce, things that give that like extra, what is that? And so it says, I have to finish the sentence. Sprinkle this probiotic-rich umami seasoning on avocado toast, popcorn, rice bowls. I'm not going to read that one because it's not vegan. Salad, baked potatoes, and veggies. We promise it's good on literally everything. No funky ingredients, just miso. It's just miso. I don't know how they make it. And it's salty because it's miso, right? It's the miso that we know in form that's in a paste, but they've somehow manufactured into a powder. Can you see this? So that is just one of those packets for freshness in there. I'm just going to pop that out. It's not an exact substitution for nutritional yeast in the sense that it's not as like that cheesy element that nutritional yeast has. And nutritional yeast, I would say, is a little less salty. So I wouldn't make a cheese sauce with this. But when you're sprinkling it or maybe making a nut parm where you use a little bit of nutritional yeast, this is perfect. This is your substitute. Or just enjoy it as is because it's delicious. It has that extra quality aroma flavor of something. So there it is. It's miso sprinkle, Miso Nuch. And I put the link there for you guys. It's organic, vegan, soy-free, no additives, no preservatives. It's literally just Miso. And if it's soy free, I'm wondering what it's made. Is it chickpea? Yes, it's chickpea miso, which I love. I love chickpea miso because I find chickpea miso is a little bit milder in flavor than soy-based misos. So it's chickpea miso, soy-free, organic, and no anything else in there. So check that one out on their site, Miso Nuch. I think it's one of those ingredients that's going to catch on when people know about it. It's going to catch on because it's that kind of thing that you can sprinkle on pizza, soup, sandwiches, grains, Buddha bowls, greens, like everything, and squash, winter squash. So there. Yes, Kitty Mommy says, already, I just put 2 green kabocha in the oven. Woo-woo, good. I would love to know after, Kitty Mommy, come back after and share how you like it, okay, what you think. And giveaway. So I'm going to give away a copy of Dreena's Kind Kitchen from the comments on this video. But right now we're in a stream, right? On YouTube, I have this stream of comments. I need you to go after the video is done and comment after. Tell me what you learned here today. Did you learn something about squash? And are you going to try one of these new varieties? If so, which one? I think I tried to convince everyone about this guy, right? I heard it. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. So let me know what you're going to try, and I will draw a winner from the names on the video by the time I do my next video. How about that? Okay. And I think that's it. Did I cover everything I wanted to say? Yes. And go try that squash sauce. It's in, I put the link in the description and it goes to my site. And then there's a YouTube video there. So you can watch the video and make that squash sauce as well. And also you can freeze squash, right? So if you have a lot, you can freeze it and then use it in soups and whatnot. I hope that helps everyone. I'll be back when I'm back. Enter the giveaway, subscribe on YouTube, and I'll be back with more soon. Thank you for chatting with me, being part of this video, being part of my community. It's really good to be back with you. I was away for a while. We had a lot going on. And I was away last weekend in Boston, so just like had a lot happening. So I'm really happy to be back with you all. And thanks for being part of this with me today. Okay. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone. Blessings to you all. Bye-bye.